Police raid our gay wedding. The video that made the court apologize. The police officers kicked the church doors open with a bang that echoed through the vaulted ceilings like thunder on a clear day. I stood there, Cameron, my hands trembling as I held the ring, staring at Wesley's wide eyes across from me at the altar, the words, "I do," still hanging in the air like a broken promise. Guests gasped, chairs scraped against the stone floor, and Aunt Linda from my side of the family let out a sharp cry as two officers in dark uniforms pushed past the flower arrangements and headed straight for us. "This ceremony is over," one of them barked, badge glinting under the stained glass light streaming through the windows of St. Mark's in downtown Chicago. My heart slammed against my ribs. We had planned this day for months, chosen this quiet Episcopal church because it welcomed everyone, or so we thought. Now flashlights swept across the pews, and a third officer was already speaking into his radio about a disturbance complaint. Wesley's hand found mine, squeezing tight, but I could feel the shake in his grip too. This was supposed to be our moment, the one where we finally stood in front of the people we loved and said the vows we'd written together on late nights in our tiny apartment. Instead, cold metal cuffs clicked around my wrists before I could even process what was happening. The whole thing lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Cameras on phones lit up everywhere. I caught a glimpse of my best friend Marcus in the back row, his face pale, phone raised like he couldn't decide whether to film or run. Wesley tried to argue, voice steady at first, explaining we had every legal right, that the license was signed and the pastor had approved everything. The officers didn't care. They cited some vague noise ordinance and a tip about unauthorized gathering. But the looks they exchanged told the real story. This wasn't about noise. It was about us, two men in tuxedos exchanging rings in a city that still had pockets of people who thought love like ours didn't belong in a church. My mother sat frozen in the front pew, her hands clutching the program so hard the paper crumpled. Dad wasn't even there. He had refused to come, texting me the night before that he wouldn't watch his only son throw his life away. Wesley's parents had flown in from California, supportive smiles ready, but now his mom was crying quietly while his dad stepped forward to protest. The officers ignored him too. They marched us out past the white roses and lavender we had chosen together, past the string quartet that never got to play our first dance song. Outside on the steps, the autumn sun felt too bright, too normal for what was unfolding. A small crowd had already gathered, phones out, whispering. I kept thinking this had to be a mistake, some horrible mix-up that would clear up with one phone call. But deep down I knew better. This was the world we lived in, the one we had spent years learning to navigate. As they loaded us into separate squad cars, I caught Wesley's eye through the window. He mouthed, "I love you," and I nodded, throat too tight to speak. The drive to the station was silent except for the crackle of the radio. I stared at the back of the officer's head, replaying every choice that led us here. College in Chicago, the rainy afternoon, I met Wesley in the campus coffee shop when he spilled his latte on my laptop and insisted on buying me a new one. The late-night talks in the library where I finally admitted out loud that I was gay and terrified my Texas family would disown me. Wesley had listened without judgment, his California optimism wrapping around my doubts like a lifeline. We fell in love slowly, carefully, building something real amid exams and part-time jobs. After graduation, I landed a marketing gig at a downtown firm. Wesley taught history at a high school in the suburbs. We moved in together, adopted a rescue dog named Scout, and started talking about forever. But forever came with baggage. My dad's weekly calls always circled back to, "When are you going to meet a nice girl?" My sister tried to be supportive but kept sending me articles about reparative therapy like it was helpful. Wesley's family was better, inviting us for holidays, but even they worried about how the world would treat us. We pushed forward anyway, planning the wedding in secret at first, then inviting only those we thought could handle it. Clearly, someone couldn't. At the station, they separated us for questioning. I sat in a cold interview room, wrists still cuffed, explaining over and over that we had permits, that this was legal. The sergeant taking notes barely looked up. "Complaint came in from a concerned citizen," he muttered. I knew exactly who that citizen was, even if I didn't say it out loud. My father had connections back in Texas, old friends in law enforcement who owed him favors. He wouldn't have flown up, but a phone call? That was his style. The hours blurred. They fingerprinted me, took my phone, left me alone with my thoughts. I kept seeing Wesley's face at the altar, the way his smile had lit up the whole church before everything shattered. By the time they released us with a warning and a court date, night had fallen. Marcus was waiting outside with our jackets and a ride. "I got it on video," he said quietly, handing me my phone. "The whole thing. People are already sharing it." I didn't know then that Marcus's shaky footage would change everything. Wesley and I hugged in the parking lot, the city lights blurring through tears we refused to let fall in front of anyone. We went home to our apartment, Scout jumping all over us like nothing had happened, and collapsed on the couch. The wedding cake we had ordered sat untouched in the fridge. We didn't speak much that night, just held each other until sleep finally came. The next morning the video was everywhere. Marcus had posted it with a simple caption, "Love shouldn't be a crime." By noon it had 500,000 views. Comments poured in, some supportive, some vicious. Local news picked it up by evening, interviewing the pastor who confirmed everything was legal. My mother called, voice shaky, apologizing for not standing up sooner. Wesley's parents booked the next flight back to help, but my father stayed silent. The court date loomed 2 weeks away, a hearing on the disturbance charge that could mean fines or worse. We hired a lawyer, a sharp woman named Elena who specialized in civil rights cases. She watched the video once and said, "This isn't just a noise complaint. This is discrimination, and we're going to prove it." We spent those 2 weeks gathering affidavits from guests, pulling permits, and preparing statements. I went back to work, trying to act normal while colleagues whispered. Wesley canceled his classes for a few days, spending hours on the phone with supporters who had seen the clip. Every night we talked about the future, about whether we should just elope somewhere quiet or fight this all the way. The pressure built like a storm cloud. I started questioning everything, wondering if my love for Wesley was worth tearing my family apart. He held me through the doubts, reminding me we had chosen each other for a reason. But the doubts didn't vanish. They grew quieter in the daylight and louder at 3 a.m. when I stared at the ceiling replaying my father's last words before the wedding. "You're making a mistake, son. This isn't the life I raised you for." I had hung up without answering, but the words stuck like glue. Wesley noticed the distance. He didn't push, just made coffee in the mornings and left little notes on the fridge, things like, "We're in this together," written in his neat teacher's handwriting. Marcus came over almost every evening, bringing takeout and updates on the video's spread. It had crossed 1 million views now, picked up by national outlets. Strangers messaged us on social media, sharing their own stories of interrupted ceremonies or family rejection. Some offered donations for legal fees. Others sent hate. The contrast kept me up at night. At work, my boss called me into his office, not to fire me, but to say the company stood behind me. It felt surreal, this sudden visibility when all we had wanted was a quiet wedding. Wesley's school principal did the same, giving him time off without penalty. Small mercies in a storm. The hearing arrived on a crisp October morning. We walked into the courthouse hand in hand, Elena leading the way with folders thick as novels. My mother showed up, sitting behind us in the gallery. Dad's seat stayed empty. The judge, an older man with wire-rimmed glasses, listened as the city attorney argued the complaint was legitimate, that neighbors had reported shouting and blocking the street. Elena countered with our permits, the pastor's testimony, and the video. She played the clip in court, the sound of boots on stone, the shouts, my voice cracking as I asked what we had done wrong. The room went silent. When it ended, the judge asked for a recess. In the hallway, Wesley pulled me close. "Whatever happens, we already won," he whispered. I wanted to believe him. Back inside, the judge cleared the charges but added a warning about future complaints. It felt like a slap, like the system had winked at the real issue. Elena wasn't done. "Your Honor, this was targeted harassment based on sexual orientation. We intend to file a federal civil rights suit." The judge nodded slowly. "That's your right." Outside the steps, reporters waited. Microphones thrust forward, questions flying. I answered a few, voice steadier than I felt, while Wesley stood beside me, solid as ever. That night we celebrated quietly with Marcus and a bottle of wine, but the real fight was just beginning. The civil suit moved fast. Elena gathered more evidence, Witness statements from guests who heard officers mutter slurs under their breath. The video went viral again when a celebrity activist shared it. Donations poured in. My sister texted for the first time in months, saying she was proud. Still no word from Dad. The pressure at home shifted too. Wesley and I argued one night about whether to settle or push for a public apology. I wanted to drop it, exhausted from the spotlight. He wanted justice, not just for us but for every couple like us. The fight ended in tears and makeup kisses, but the crack in our unity lingered. Marcus noticed. "You two are stronger than this," he said over coffee one morning. He had been our rock, filming the raid without thinking, posting it because he believed in us. Yet even he had his limits. His own family back in Indiana had started questioning his friendship with those people. He laughed it off, but I saw the strain. Friendships frayed under the weight, just like families. Weeks turned into months. Depositions dragged on. I relived the raid in sterile conference rooms, describing every second while lawyers picked apart my words. Wesley did the same. The city attorneys tried to paint us as provocateurs, but the video didn't lie. It showed clear bias. Elena kept us focused, reminding us this was bigger than one wedding. I started therapy, something I had resisted for years, unpacking the shame my upbringing had planted deep. Wesley joined a support group for queer educators. We grew, separately and together, learning that love wasn't just romance. It was choosing each other every day, even when the world pushed back. Scout sensed the tension, curling between us on the couch like a furry mediator. Small moments kept us going. Cooking dinner together, weekend hikes along the lake, where we could breathe without cameras. One Sunday we drove out to the suburbs and found a quiet spot to renew our vows privately, just us and the trees. It wasn't the church we wanted, but it was ours. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday in February. Elena called at 7 a.m., voice buzzing. "They want to settle. But there's more." The video footage from the body cams just dropped in Discovery. It's worse than we thought. We met at her office within the hour. The clips showed officers joking about turning the wedding into a circus before entering the church. One said, "Teach these people a lesson." My stomach twisted. Wesley's hand found mine under the table. Elena laid out the new strategy: push for a public apology from the department, policy changes, and damages. The city resisted at first, but the body cam evidence was damning. Media pressure mounted. National outlets ran segments on modern discrimination in plain sight. My mother flew up to stay with us for a week, cooking meals and listening without judgment for the first time. She even asked Wesley about his teaching job, a small bridge I never thought she'd cross. Dad still hadn't called. The silence hurt more than anger. Court dates blurred together. I testified again, this time in federal court, describing not just the raid but the years of hiding who I was to keep my family's approval. Wesley spoke about watching me shrink every time I talked to my father. The judge, a woman this time, listened intently. During cross-examination, the city's lawyer tried to discredit us, suggesting the complaint was legitimate. Elena destroyed that with timestamps and witness corroboration. Outside the courthouse each day, supporters gathered, rainbow flags waving in the Chicago wind. Marcus organized a small rally one afternoon, friends and strangers chanting our names. It felt overwhelming, this outpouring for two ordinary guys who just wanted to get married. At night, the weight settled back in. I woke once from a nightmare of the church doors bursting open again, only this time Wesley wasn't there. He held me until morning, whispering promises we both needed to hear. The lawsuit dragged into spring. We postponed our rescheduled wedding twice, waiting for resolution. Work suffered, friendships stretched thin. Marcus confessed one night over beers that his boyfriend had left because the spotlight was too much. "I don't blame him," he said, "but I blame the world that made this happen." His words hit hard. I realized our fight was costing the people around us too. Wesley suggested couples counseling. We went, learning to voice fears instead of letting them fester. The therapist helped me see that my father's rejection wasn't my failure, it was his. Slowly the knots inside me loosened. Wesley opened up about his own fears of losing his job if the school board turned conservative. We leaned on each other in ways we never had before, the raid forging us stronger. Then came the day of closing arguments. Elena stood tall, playing the body cam audio for the jury. The room went deathly quiet as the officer's laughter filled the space. When she finished, she looked straight at the jury. This isn't about a noise complaint. It's about two men who dared to love openly. They deserve more than an apology. They deserve change. The city rested without much fight. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. We waited in a side room, pacing, holding hands. When the bailiff called us back, my pulse thundered. The forewoman stood. We fined for the plaintiffs. The courtroom erupted. Elena hugged us both. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following week, but indicated a strong recommendation for policy reform. Outside, cameras flashed. We gave a short statement, thanking supporters and asking for privacy. That night we ordered pizza and let ourselves feel the victory for the first time. Scout stole a slice, and for a moment everything felt almost normal. The final hearing arrived under clear blue skies. The judge read the ruling aloud. The department would issue a formal public apology, implement mandatory sensitivity training, and pay damages that covered our legal fees plus more. But the real moment came when the police chief himself stood in court. He cleared his throat, looked us in the eye, and said, "On behalf of the city and the department, we apologize for the harm caused by the actions of our officers. What happened at your wedding was wrong, rooted in bias we will not tolerate. We are committed to doing better." The words hung in the air. I felt something shift inside me, not forgiveness exactly, but release. Wesley squeezed my hand so hard I thought my bones might crack. Reporters surged forward after, but we slipped out a side door with Elena. Back home we sat on the balcony watching the city lights, Scout at our feet. "We did it," Wesley said softly. I nodded, tears finally falling freely. The video that started it all had forced real change. Not just for us, but for the next couple who wanted to say, "I do," without fear. Life didn't snap back to normal overnight. The apology made headlines for a week, then faded. My mother called more often, even asking if she could visit for our rescheduled wedding. Dad sent a short text, "Glad it's over." It wasn't acceptance, but it was something. I replied with a simple thanks. Wesley's parents threw us a small party in California over summer. We flew out. The plane ride filled with laughter and plans. Marcus came too, his new boyfriend in tow, the spotlight having faded enough for life to resume. At the party we danced under string lights, the same song we never got to play in church. It felt like healing. Back in Chicago, we finally set a new date for October, the anniversary of the raid. This time the guest list was smaller, more intentional. We chose a different venue, a garden overlooking the lake. No church this time, but plenty of love. The months leading up were different. I had learned to stand taller in my identity, no longer shrinking from questions at work or family dinners. Wesley started a school club for LGBTQ students, turning his pain into purpose. We volunteered at a local center, mentoring young men navigating their own journeys. The raid had cracked us open, showing us the strength we carried together. Friendships that survived grew deeper. Marcus became like a brother, his loyalty never wavering. Even the rifts with extended family softened as stories spread. One cousin reached out, sharing her own hidden truth. The world felt a little less heavy. As fall leaves turned gold, we prepared again. This time no secrets, no fear. I bought new rings, simple bands engraved with the date of the original ceremony and the court ruling. Wesley wrote new vows, ones that spoke of the fight we had won. The night before the wedding we walked along the lake, hands linked, talking about the future, kids maybe, a house with a yard for Scout. The city lights reflected on the water like stars. "Whatever comes next," Wesley said, "we face it together." I believed him completely. The garden wedding was everything the first one wasn't. Peaceful, joyful, surrounded only by those who truly celebrated us. My mother walked me down the aisle, tears in her eyes as she hugged Wesley. His parents beamed from the front row. Marcus stood as best man, cracking jokes to ease the nerves. The officiant, a friend from the center, spoke about love's resilience. When we exchanged rings this time, no doors burst open. Only cheers and confetti. The reception lasted late, laughter echoing under the stars. We danced our first dance without interruption. The song finally played in full. In quiet moments I caught Wesley's eye and remembered the church steps, the cuffs, the fear. It all felt distant now, like a story we had survived. But growth wasn't finished. Months later, a national network wanted to feature our story in a documentary on LGBTQ rights. We hesitated, then agreed, using the platform to advocate for training reforms we had helped inspire. The documentary aired, bringing more messages from strangers. Some young men wrote that our fight gave them courage to come out. Others said the court apology changed how their local departments operated. The ripple effect humbled us. At home, life settled into a rhythm. Work, weekends, quiet nights cooking together. Scout grew older, gray around the muzzle, but still protective. We adopted a kitten to keep him company, naming her Justice in a moment of dark humor. Family visits became easier. Dad even showed up for Thanksgiving one year, awkward but present. He didn't say much about the wedding, but he shook Wesley's hand. Small steps. Challenges still arose. A new city administration tried to roll back some training programs, prompting us to testify again. This time we stood in front of committees with confidence born from experience. Wesley's school faced budget cuts that threatened his club. We fought that too, rallying parents and students. Each battle reminded us why the original raid mattered. It wasn't just about one day. It was about carving space for love in a world that sometimes forgot it belonged to everyone. Through it all, our bond deepened. Arguments became discussions. Doubts turned into plans. We bought a small house in the suburbs, planted a garden, and talked about fostering kids someday. The journey from that church altar to here had reshaped us both. One quiet evening on our back porch, watching fireflies, Wesley turned to me. "Remember when you thought love wasn't worth the fight?" I smiled. I was wrong. He leaned in, kissing me softly under the same sky that had witnessed our lowest and highest moments. The video that once shattered our day had ultimately rebuilt our lives stronger. We had faced misunderstanding, betrayal from systems we trusted, sacrifice of privacy and peace, and the truth of our own resilience. In the end, acceptance came not just from courts or families, but from within. Years passed in a gentle rhythm. Our documentary led to speaking engagements at colleges and community centers. Young men approached us after talks, sharing stories that mirrored ours, and we listened, offering the guidance we once needed. Cameron and Wesley became more than names. They became symbols for some, though we never sought that. We kept our life private where we could, protecting the quiet moments that mattered most. Sunday brunches, Scout's slow walks in the park, evenings reading on the couch with Justice curled between us. The house filled with photos, not of the raid but of the real wedding, of trips to California, of family gatherings that grew warmer each year. My father never fully embraced everything, but he attended our anniversary parties and sent cards on birthdays. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, the kind that comes from persistent love rather than force. Wesley continued teaching, his club thriving with new members each semester. I moved into a leadership role at work, mentoring others navigating identity in corporate spaces. Together we started a small nonprofit, funding legal aid for couples facing similar interruptions. The first grant went to a pair in a rural town whose ceremony had been protested. Hearing their thanks reminded us why we kept going. Marcus married his boyfriend in our garden the following summer, a full-circle moment that brought tears to all of us. Friendships that had rifted mended or evolved. Some faded naturally as lives diverged, teaching us that not every bond lasts forever, but the loyal ones do. Societal shifts continued around us, some forward, some backward, but we faced them side by side, stronger for every scar. On our 10th anniversary, we returned to St. Mark's, not for a ceremony, but for a quiet visit. The pastor welcomed us, showing the plaque the church had installed honoring inclusive love. We stood at the same altar, hands linked, remembering the chaos and the courage it sparked. Outside, the same steps where cameras once flashed now held only fallen leaves. We laughed softly at how far we had come. Driving home, Wesley said, "I wouldn't change any of it." I agreed. The journey had stripped away illusions, forced us to confront family expectations, societal judgment, and our own fears. It taught us that true acceptance starts inside and ripples outward through actions, not wishes. Love had been tested by misunderstanding, betrayal by institutions, sacrifice of comfort, and the raw truth of who we were. In every decision, every consequence, we grew. As the sun set over the lake that evening, we sat on our porch again, Scout dozing at our feet, justice chasing shadows. The city hummed in the distance, a reminder that the world kept turning, still imperfect but a little kinder because two men refused to hide. We had found our place in it, not despite the raid, but because of what we built afterward. The video that once broke us open had ultimately set us free. True or false? Family expectations and societal pressure will always outweigh personal happiness in the end.